My name is Murph, and reading has genuinely saved my life. This is my introduction to BookTube. If you don't know me, my name is Murph. I have been posting videos on TikTok and Instagram for a while now, but I decided I wanted to switch over to YouTube because my style of content is nice, but I've always been a yapper. Like, I just love talking. I want to talk for just minutes on end. I felt like YouTube was the best spot for that. I want to talk about these books, these stories that I read, and how my life has been changed by them. Over the last 2 years, I've fallen in love with reading, and that has been the best decision of my life. That started when I watched the Dune movie, and I'd heard the book was better. I didn't even know there was a book. I was like, oh, this movie was sweet. Everybody said the book was better. Spoiler alert, it is. It's way better, and I love the movie so much, but the book was just fantastic. That made me fall in love with the reading. That was the first longer book that I had ever completed in my life. I think before that, the only books I'd ever finished were like Geronimo Stilton or Goosebumps or I Survived books, just so, those like smaller books in elementary school. Like, I hadn't even read like The Lightning Thief or The Hunger Games, just smaller books that everybody else was reading. I was like, I don't want to read. I don't want to read books. Nobody wants to read. Well, I do now. But then when I got to college, I didn't really make a lot of friends until my senior year. So my first 3 years, I was just by myself. That's when I picked up Dune, and I started reading some manga even. And then I picked up Red Rising and The Way of Kings. I didn't know who J.R.R. Tolkien was. I didn't know who George R.R. Martin was before 2.5 years ago. Like I said before, though, I was in a bad place my first 3 years of college because I was by myself. I wasn't doing anything. I was just going through the motion. It felt like I was just like on a course to the end of my life. Not that I was like waiting for it, but I was like, okay, I'm just going to go to school, going to work for the rest of my life. I was okay with that. I was content until I realized I wasn't. I started reading these stories from these authors and getting their perspective on life. I read The Nickel Boys by Colson Whitehead, one of my favorite books of all time now, and one of the greatest historical fictions. I mean, I guess I can't say that because I haven't read a bunch. I'm hopping in here after editing because I realized I didn't say what The Nickel Boys is about. The Nickel Boys is a historical fiction novel that follows Elwood Curtis, and he basically, through a series of miscommunications, ends up in a school for reform in Florida. This book actually follows the events of a real-life reform school. Elwood and Turner are black kids that grew up in the Jim Crow South in the 60s, and it follows what this racial segregation of this era, what they had to go through. The story basically shows how they persevered, and they are not just there to survive, they want to live and actually create a life for themselves where it doesn't feel like they're just going through it. But it changed my perspective on life. You're not just meant to survive, you're meant to live. You're meant to enjoy life and do the things that you want to do. I actually just recently reread it, and my perspective is still the same. It's such a good book, and I think it is so important for anybody who is growing up in a tough situation. I'm not comparing myself, okay? I'm not comparing myself to what the Nickel Boys went through. Obviously, that is way worse, but it can give you a perspective on any type of hardship and appreciate the writing in it. Also, if anybody's read The Underground Railroad, I'm reading that soon. If you have any thoughts on that, please let me know. Then let's skip to this year. I started posting on TikTok. I started enjoying these stories with other people, and it felt fantastic. I felt this connection to people that I hadn't in years. Sharing my love for these books and these stories, I just felt invigorated. I felt like I had a new life. I felt like I wasn't going through the motions anymore. So I guess this is my call to action. If you have been struggling with life and maybe you clicked on this and you're just thinking, I don't know, I'm not loving books, I have never been a reader, just try. I feel like you just have not found your genre. That is my thing. I feel like you need to find the book for you, and it can change your life. If you haven't read The Nickel Boys, maybe try that and it can change your perspective. I think the other thing is just opening a book and escaping is not a bad thing. People always say that escaping to these books, just like keeping your mind in La La Land, is a bad thing. I completely disagree. Getting in your own head about where you are in life is the worst thing. Going into these fantasy lands, the sci-fi lands, historical fiction, romance, whatever, going into these fictional worlds changed my life. It saved my life almost. Going into these fictional lands saved my life, and it can change yours. I feel like it can. I also want to know, what book has just changed your life perspective like that? What is one fictional book that you were like, I would do anything to read this for the first time again because it changed the trajectory of my life almost? I've grown a great community on TikTok and on Instagram. I'm hoping to do the same on BookTube, and I will be posting all of my favorite books, my book recs. I think one thing about me is that I love to share underrated books. Like my favorite series of all time is the Devoured Worlds trilogy by Megan E. O'Keefe. It is a sci-fi space opera. If you have not read it, that's the kind of content that I want to push out. I want to show these books to people. And I love talking about these popular books. Like I'm going to be reading A Song of Ice and Fire for the first time starting in December. That's so exciting. But I want to share with you some of these underrated books that I love to read. And I want to give you new recs that you don't really see. But at the same time, I'm a newish reader, so I'm going to be sharing my experience on these books that everybody's read that I haven't. Like right now, I'm finishing up the Hunger Games trilogy. I had never read it. I'd never seen the movies. Really enjoyed it. I'm kind of struggling on Mockingjay right now. But once I do, I'm going to be reading Ballad of Songbirds and Snakes and Sunrise on the Reaping. So excited for that. So those are books that everybody's read that I haven't. I think this will be a fun time. I love just yapping about books. I just love books. My favorite genres are fantasy, sci-fi, historical fiction. Those three. I've dabbled in some lit fic and some romance lately. I've enjoyed them. So if you have recs that are for, fantasy, sci-fi readers that would love your type of books that's different, I would love to hear them. But yeah, welcome to my booktube. If you're new here, if you're from my other platforms, I appreciate you guys so much for coming over here. This is what I want to do. I love yapping about books and even about my life sometimes. But this is just for me to talk about books with y'all, give you something to put on the background. If you just want to listen to me talk, that would be fantastic. Welcome to my booktube. I'm Murph. Hope you stay a while. Also, you really should read the Devoured Worlds trilogy by Megan E. O'Keefe. It is fantastic. If you need me to explain it, I'll explain it down in the comments. It's so good.